everyone, and good morning at the end of the morning here. My name is Elizabeth Glidden, and I am the Deputy Executive Director at the Minnesota Housing Partnership, and we're welcoming you to Building for the Future, Competitive Applications for HUD's Green and Resilient Retrofit Program. This is a program where MHP is excited to be the host, but we are not providing the content this time. We've gotten some great experts from community stability partners and the housing stability advisors who are going to be running this program for you. Just as we get going, and I know we still have a few folks who are popping on, I would invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat if you're able. It'd be nice to see your names, and if you're associated with an organization, that organization, and it just helps folks who are providing the content today know a little bit more of who's in the room, so to speak. As we get going into the content today as well, we're hoping this is a little bit more particular group. This is a program that's going to be most of interest to those who are thinking of submitting applications for this program. That it would be great to see your questions as you have them in the chat. And depending on time, you might get called on to sort of explain further. And we're hoping this can be run kind of a little bit conversationally as we go through the content for today. Next slide. We could, yeah, thank you. So just again, as MHP is not running the show today too much, just wanted to make sure I put in a reminder of who we are. We are a 30-plus year nonprofit that has been working to advance housing and community development capacity for those economically most in need. And we work in three primary areas. We develop public policy, we produce original research, and we provide community development services across the United States. And as we get going here, next slide, we have a nice treat, which is Catherine Teichen, who is a climate policy director with Minnesota Housing, is here to provide us with a welcome and some quick updates from our state financing agency before we get going into the program. Catherine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth and MHP, for having me here today. And welcome, everybody. It's so glad that you could all join us to learn a little bit more about the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program. I'm not here explicitly to talk about the GRRP, but I did want to highlight some of the opportunities where I thought you might be interested in engaging with Minnesota Housing on some of our climate and other housing priorities. I think it's really important that we're leveraging different programs and opportunities together and trying to make sure that we're making sure that everything can fit well and be accessed well together. So in that vein, I'll also share a few climate resources that we're tracking that might be on the horizon and of interest to you all. So the first thing I wanted to share is that staff at Minnesota Housing are in the initial stages of planning for our 2026-2027 Qualified Allocation Plan, otherwise known as the QAP. Most of you know that the QAP is our way to publicly declare how we'll be scoring projects that are applying for our annual consolidated RFP. We currently have a category that gives selection points for projects that are pursuing a variety of different enhanced sustainability pathways, as we call it. And we are looking to strengthen that section in the next QAP. So we'd really love some feedback from you all there. We're currently planning on 2 public comment periods on the QAP. The first will be in June, and then there will be a second one in September. So stay tuned, that's coming up. With regards to programs that are in the works, we recently released an RFP for our publicly owned housing program, POP. We are actively planning for subsequent RFP rounds for that program, including potentially having a more climate-specific, climate-focused funding round for publicly owned housing. So if that is of interest to you, please let us know. We're also planning for another funding round for a capacity building program, aiming at a spring or a summer RFP release. The goal of this grant has historically been and continues to be to build the capacity of organizations and communities to address the root causes of housing challenges. And it includes 2 uses: organizational and intermediary. So for organizational capacity building, the grantee can use funds to build their own capacity. For intermediary capacity building, the grantee can use funds to build the capacity of others by providing pass-through grants or technical assistance. We are really trying to highlight that this grant can fund a wide range of activities related to energy and climate. That isn't something we've historically seen as a use, but we would like it to be in the next funding rounds. So, for example, eligible proposals could include providing technical assistance to other organizations around climate, including resiliency, renewable energy, passive house, net zero decarbonization programs. Or second, it could also fund organizations who want to build up their own capacity in the climate and energy fields and or want to engage other communities on that topic. So those would all be eligible costs. Please note that development or pre-development costs wouldn't be eligible, but if you're looking to build capacity for yourself or for others around climate, this could be a good RFP to take a look at. With regards to federal funds through the Inflation Reduction Act, we are part of the Department of Commerce's Solar for All proposal that was submitted last fall, hoping to bring some resources to the agency to help deploy solar on multifamily and single-family affordable housing. No funding decisions from the federal government have been released for that program yet, so we're all eagerly awaiting. We are also working with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to be part of a coalition application that's focused on equitable housing decarbonization through the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. So that we're hoping will help us have funds to help you all implement deep decarbonization projects in new construction and rehab of affordable housing. So basically having funds to make sure that those really net zero, passive house, other techniques of deep decarbonization projects don't get value engineered out of designs. Other state agencies, tribal nations, and local units of government are also participating in that coalition with us, and they all have their own specific residential decarbonization projects that they're looking to fund as well. So that application is due to the EPA on April 1st, and so we're looking forward to that. There are other federal opportunities on the horizon, and we're also starting to our internal planning for the 2025 budget and state legislative session, so looking a year ahead. And we're always welcoming feedback on what you'd like to see us pursuing there. So I promised Elizabeth I'd be quick, so that was a quick run through, but I'm always happy to chat, and I'd love to give more details on any of these items if they perk your interest, and I'll put my email in the chat so we can talk more. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Catherine. And we will be sending out a follow-up email to this group so we can also include any of those updates from you there. And with that, I'd love at this point to turn it over to Esther Toporowski, who is the Executive Director of Community Sustainability Advisors.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks, Catherine, for that information. Just a wealth of amazing knowledge, and you guys are doing phenomenal stuff on the green side and affordable housing. And thanks to MHP for hosting us. I'm the Executive Director of Community Sustainability Partners, and my colleagues here with Housing Sustainability Advisors, Jared Lang and Ryan, are going to be walking through the GRRP program. Just a tiny bit about us. We're a collaborative that is mission aligned, and we're a for-profit and a nonprofit really focused on climate and affordable housing. And we've worked for many, many years, me and Jared and our team, in housing, where we sort of sat and we've been the climate leads in our respective organizations. And we've created new organizations with a really singular focus to really bridge climate and affordable housing together. That's sort of who we are. And if we can go to the next slide, I'm just going to talk a little bit about a grant that we got from the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce put out an RFP. And the intention of this RFP was really to create capacity for agencies and organizations across Minnesota to draw down more federal funds. And there was a housing and sort of energy focus, and those are the sectors that we're experts in. And we came to talk to a few folks kind of in your market and applied for the Department of Commerce grant. So we have some funding to provide direct technical assistance as part of this grant. And this technical assistance, as you guys can see, it's for nonprofits and public agencies to really get access to federal funds. So this is a sort of list of technical assistance that we can provide as part of that grant. So looking at pipeline and doing trainings, part of why we're sort of doing this webinar here, technical support to folks, some screening for solar, program development, capacity building, and kind of grant development and submission for some of these federal funds. Because I know a lot of folks are thinking about this stuff, especially, Catherine, you guys will be getting some pretty interesting potential pots of funding as well. So we have a lot of expertise on the climate side and energy financing, 15, 20, 30 plus years together doing that and how to sort of integrate it well with affordable housing. So today, my colleagues are going to really walk us through just one federal funding program, and I'll let Jared and Ryan introduce themselves and we'll get into it. And if you guys have questions throughout, put questions in the chat. We want this to be kind of conversational.
Awesome. Thank you, Esther. Great explanation of the collaborative and everything. I love working with Esther. She has a great way of explaining things. So I'm Jared Lang. I'm a affordable housing developer first, and I've been focused on the intersection of affordable housing development and energy investment for about 15 years. I was with the National Housing Trust for 10 years, and while there, I got to know Mary Tingerthal, who was on the board of the National Housing Trust, and I believe still is, right, Mary?
I'm on the board of the development entity of the National Housing Trust.
Okay, great. Well, we saw this opportunity for this grant, and we've been working in New York and California and a couple other states, and we're just really excited to kind of I have some relationships with people at Aon and Common Bond, and love the work that you guys do in Minnesota, and was just excited to be able to work together. So we're getting to know the Minnesota affordable housing landscape, and we're hoping that we can kind of bring some best practices, new ideas into the market. So this we're going to talk just today about this HUD Green and Resilient Retrofit program. It's been out there a little bit, and as in the beginning, it was sort of like we gave this presentation and we did all the talking, and then as we've been giving this presentation and the program has been out for a little while, it's been more of an interactive conversation. So we would be happy. It's not a huge group here today to have a conversation, and to kind of like, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to put questions in the chat, we can stop along the way. We're monitoring, and you're welcome to come off of mute and talk with us too. And I'm joined here by my colleague Ryan Schlom. Ryan, you want to just say hello?
Hey, good afternoon. I will be helping Jared walk through this presentation, and I will be monitoring the chat as we go along as well.
Yeah, Ryan is great at remembering to reminding me of all the details. So he's deep in this. We're doing applications for a bunch of different organizations. Ryan, Common Bond. We're doing one of these applications for Common Bond, right?
That's correct. This week we kicked off a comprehensive application for Common Bond. And we will get into what the scope of the comprehensive program is in just a couple of minutes, but maybe that's a good way for us to kick it off into the actual presentation.
Sure. Yeah. So, today we're talking about the money that HUD got through the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is the, 837 million in cash and $4 billion in loan authority, which they've turned around and kind of created 3 different programs with that we're going to get into. So there's sort of 3 paths that they created for this program. The way it goes is there's elements. I think they're actually pretty well named. Elements is for specific activities that you have targeted. Leading edge is for super high performance buildings, and comprehensive is for projects that have really deep needs, and trouble doing a refinancing. So I'll go a little further into this. So elements is kind of up to it's for specific activities up to $750,000 per property. So it's not going to change your deal, but it could fill a good gap. The leading edge, in sort of $60,000. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, the leading edge, in $60,000 per property and having it be up to $10 million, is really meant to change the scope of work of your property. And it's for you to take your project from what it may have been at the code standard and take it to a especially high performance building, and fill that gap of that cost. And then the comprehensive is actually the largest program, 1.47 billion in funding toward that, and 300 awards. And it's a bit of a combination of it's targeted toward projects that have are having sort of difficulty being able to refinance and maintain their affordability, have a lot of maintenance needs and resiliency issues, and are looking for kind of a way to deal with deferred maintenance. Ryan, anything to add here? We can just get into further.
No, let's keep it moving.
Okay. So we get a lot of questions about eligibility, how applications are ranked, and we're really trying to add to the conversation here about some of the things you guys have already seen. So it must be HUD assisted property inside your portfolio, has to be a 202, Section 811, project-based rental assistance project, cannot be a PBRA with a contract that is before September 2021. So wait, I'm sorry. It can be. So you can do a RAD project, but it has to be on, the contract has to have been executed on or before September 30, 2021. So we get lots of questions about RAD deals. And yeah, cannot be a project-based voucher. Can't be a PBV project. This is a constant question that we get also. It's frustrating. But if you have a project that has the state has project-based the vouchers, but they're really choice vouchers, then that doesn't matter. It has to be project-based rental assistance. The ownership stuff, I think, is pretty standard. I mean, you either have to own the property or have some kind of purchase agreement on it or an option. And we're going to dig into the application ranking, but do you want to mention just something that we've noticed, Ryan, here on the bottom line?
Yeah, from that kind of first glance at the three cohorts, you think that you might be interested in the comprehensive process. I would just encourage anyone to go ahead and plug their address into the FEMA National Risk Index map to determine their risk index score. Basically, part of the eligibility for comprehensive, and we will get into this in detail in a few minutes, is about the degree of climate related risk at the property. So flagging that now, we will bring it up again in just a little bit. I'm going to take us to the next slide because we do get a lot of questions about eligibility. And here's the full list of eligible applicants taken straight from the NOFO. Do you want to say anything more about this, Jared?
No, I think, we're going to share these slides afterward for you, and you're welcome to go back. We're not going through this. So we're going to dig a little bit into the elements. So really, most importantly, right up front here, you all should know that there's already been 2 rounds that have gone by, and there are 2 rounds left. The next round of applications is due March 28th. And we've been working diligently toward that with some of our colleagues. And any approach you're going to take here has to kind of be geared around that. Go ahead. So as we talked about, $40,000 per unit, or a total of $750,000 for the elements path. What's nice here is there's no minimum amount of project-based units that you have to have. Some of the other programs are a little different. So we have some owners that are in the middle of sort of doing refinancings and looking for ways to fund solar or high performance HVAC units, and applying for these funds to kind of fill the gap to make up that difference. Anything to add here, Ryan?
No, I don't think so, other than that this cohort is for projects that are definitely in the process of recapitalization. And I think we have more on that in the next slide here. So in this application, HUD is looking for evidence that this property that is applying is advanced in its recapitalization progress. That can be shown by a tax credit letter, FHA application. We have the full list here. And then they're also looking for a valid capital needs assessment. You want to take the rest of this, Jared?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and we just listed some kind of basic elements that they expect to see in the, for the applications. But go to the next one. I think the next one's really useful.
And then we have a question when you get a break.
Oh, yeah, sure. So if a property has both HUD assisted and non-HUD assisted units, are GRRP funds restricted to HUD assist? No, you can use it for the whole building. What about commons? And you can use it for common space improvements. Yeah. Yeah. So, but you can apply for elements, and then leading edge and comprehensive, you need at least 50%. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, you have to be over 50% HUD assisted.
Yeah. In order to apply. So, the elements, they do care. You can't just be applying for working on a regular project and applying for solar to fund solar and, maybe think that you're going to get this. We try to position everybody that we work with to be more competitive for these applications. And the way we do that is we encourage them to, go with their projects that have these, that are also doing these things. So if you have a project that's pursuing a green certification, that's really makes it much more competitive. If you're doing that, you might apply for leading edge. But if you want to apply for this elements category, that's what they consider one of the most important items. They also want to see projects that are converting from natural gas or oil to electric, and hopefully going all electric. They like to see that your organization is participating in the Better Climate Challenge. And what this is the Department of Energy has a program where you sign up to make a commitment to reduce your GHG, your greenhouse gas emissions across your portfolio by 50% over 10 years. And it's a commitment. It's not a guarantee. There's no repercussions for doing it. But when you are when you sign up to be part of this program, it makes you more competitive for this application. They want you to be they like to see that you're in a priority energy community, and that right there is a link where you can just plug in your address to see if you're in that energy community. And then they also want to see if you are participating in the Better Buildings Challenge, which is another Department of Energy challenge where you commit to reducing your energy usage across your portfolio 20% in over a 10-year period. So I see a couple questions. So these are the ways to make your application the most competitive. But go ahead, Ryan.
The first question that we had in the chat is whether there's a preference or ranking for which green certifications are being pursued. The answer to that is yes, and we have a full list of that in a couple slides in the leading edge section. But HUD identifies the kind of advanced tier green building certification standards that they are looking at and giving priority to.
Yeah.
Then our next question was, is there a leverage requirement or point/competitiveness for leverage sources?
No. No. Not here. There is for the comprehensive category, but there's not for this one. So application requirements. Just want you, if you're thinking about applying for this is just like a little thing to kind of, get your gears going. There's an application form and a narrative. And those are like the bulk of the sort of application materials. There's a lot of, things from 3 to 10 that they ask for. If you have all the things that they ask for, it's taking us about 20 to 30 hours to do these applications. But it takes longer if you still need to collect these things, and they want to see commitment letters for your financial sources, like whatever evidence you can show that your recapitalization is actually like happening, evidence that the property qualifies for, the ranking categories that we just showed, a CNA, and what so Orion, number 7, inclusion of a replacement reserve analysis. Do you know what that is? Is that leverage?
Yeah, I think they just want to see if you have the funds available for these elements prior to applying to the program.
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, I want to, so Sarah, is it Sarah or Jane? No, who had the question about, oh, Chris had the question about leverage. Chris, let me take a look at that reserve, and let me see if that's what they're trying to get at, leverage, with the reserve analysis. I don't think so. I think they just want to know that you have a reserve, or that there is a reserve, like a reasonable reserve on the property.
Sarah has asked, how recent does the CNA need to be? I believe that needs to be within the last 2 years.
Really? Okay.
I believe so. I can clarify on that as well, but I think that I read that the other day.
Okay.
And then the one last thing that I want to flag before we move on, and we may have gotten another question in there, but this one cost estimate or bid covering each selected element's investment, when we're thinking about like the time commitment for these applications, that can be where the process will get held up.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you already are doing a rehab and you have like, the GC engaged, this is not hard, right, to get the cost estimate, but this could be a bit of a, a hassle, without without having the GC engaged.
There were a couple more questions in the chat. I just want to make sure you saw that.
I see. So Claire, thanks for chiming in here. So our replacement reserve analysis is typically included in a CNA. Yeah, I think that's what that is. And Sarah kind of reiterated that. So thanks for chiming in. Yes, there are a lot of details here, and we know more than most, but we don't pretend to know everything. So um so yeah, then the next category is leading edge, and this only really has one round left. And it's mostly for either substantial, if you're going to be pursuing a high performance building certification, you're going to be either doing a substantial rehabilitation or new construction. It just is not going to really work in a moderate rehab. So next slide. So you have until April 30th. So it's a few months to get one of these applications in. And the what we're finding in New York is that typically $20,000 to $40,000 per unit additional cost, and HUD is allowing up to $60,000 per unit. So we've been talking to our colleagues and our housing development partners, and just kind of like assuring them that $60,000 will get you where you need to go if you are you know interested or able to pursue an advanced green building certification. So we want to note that this category requires at least 50% of the units to be HUD assisted, whereas Elements does not have a minimum. Next slide. Next slide. So
Can you see the next slide yet?
Yeah, I can see it. So these are the categories of these are the green building certifications that they're focusing on, and they want the higher tier of these certifications. So many of my colleagues are doing enterprise green communities, but they want enterprise green communities plus. Many of us are doing national green building standard, but they want the highest tier of national green building standard. You want to go to the next slide? We got so many questions on this. And I think this was from Sarah, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
That we actually put this in, Sarah, we put this into the presentation. So these are so it's National Green Building Standard, Gold or Emerald with a Green Plus Net Zero Energy. The LEED version 4, Platinum with LEED Zero Carbon is basically the new building code in 2024 in Washington, D.C. I'm out of DC, so many of the projects I'm working on, I'm doing like platinum buildings and stuff, and this opportunity here is like code for some in some local jurisdictions, not in many at this stage, but in some. You want to go to the next slide? So this is the sort of the ranking for leading edge. They do prefer substantial rehabs over new construction, and which I think is really interesting. But they have a preference for existing buildings, and they have you rank your building by getting a score with this tool called MBEST. And we've been doing some of these MBEST scoring criteria for some different owners. Ryan, you want to talk a little bit about MBEST for a minute?
Yeah, so MBEST stands for Multifamily Building Efficiency Screening Tool. It's an Excel worksheet that HUD developed specifically for the GRRP applications. How it is scored is a little bit of a black box. However, what it is it's a physical inventory that allows HUD to estimate the energy efficiency or lack thereof at a building using this physical inventory. So HUD is giving priority in the leading edge applications to buildings with the greatest need for energy efficiency as that comes through in the MBEST tool.
Great. Yeah, so they want to see that you're in a census tract with the highest poverty rate, and then they want to see the highest number of HUD assisted units in the building total. So, we have some colleagues where they might have only 1 or 2 HUD assisted properties, and it's just either kind of a, are we eligible or not, and should we bother applying? And we will kind of take a look at all of these ranking criteria and give them our feedback. And then we have some larger owners that have 20 properties that are HUD assisted, and they're trying to figure out which 2 or 3 they want to apply for. And then we can help them rank their sort of best chances of winning. Next slide.
Yep.
So just real quick, this one similarly, this is probably the hardest application, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I think because what comes with leading edge is a pretty significant change in scope of work, and you have to document that as part of the application. And you also have to document the cost associated with it. So yeah, I think we say it's about 30 hours to do one of these applications in terms of time commitment. Do you want to talk more about the inputs, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just very quickly, there's like a narrative. You have to explain that like your development team has the like technical chops to be able to do this. We talked about MBEST, and then there is a sort of environmental due diligence that you have of an environmental review. This is typical though that you would do in a renovation or in either a substantial rehab or new construction. Yeah, and then a signed purchase agreement or that you own the property. You want to go to the next slide? So last category is the comprehensive. There are technically still 2 rounds left, but the next round is in about 22 days is the deadline. And we're coming up on the end of this program quick by May. So if you're interested or you think this is possible for you, then we should jump on it.
I would actually, maybe I would just add, if a project applies to GRRP, and this applies to any cohort, and applies to the 3rd round but isn't selected for an award, that application will automatically be rolled over for consideration in the 4th round of projects. So it would be pretty advantageous if you're looking at the comprehensive cohort and you think you're a good candidate for this one. If you can eke it in before the end of February and you somehow do not get the award, you will get 2 rounds of consideration.
Yeah, and relatively, this is comprehensive is the easiest of the 3 applications because there's just several kind of gates that you have to make your way through, but the first gate is the easiest. So this is the largest opportunity. It's really targeted existing assets that are just having difficulty meeting capital needs. And there's a lot of PHAs that public housing authorities that we've been working with interested in this category. So like we said, 50% of minimum 50% of the dwelling units need to be assisted. And this is where HUD really engages deeply with the owner, the property owner, and comes up with a scope together with them and looks at the reserves that they have and um, comes to a mutual agreement about how the upgrades are going to be paid for.
For properties that do make it into this cohort, it's pretty clear that HUD is really interested in making this work and getting the most investment that they can out of it. So HUD has it's kind of a lot of financial mechanics to stretch this award as far as they can get it. I would add that. And again, this cohort is focused on properties with the most significant need to address energy efficiency and climate risk.
Yeah. So, some of the details, we've talked about Section 8, 202, 811. HUD has a whole development team. Like when you apply, if you get awarded, um, they bring in a team to work with you to figure out the scope. And the selection on this one is very needs based and very focused on climate risk and energy efficiency need. How much energy they can save. So I see a question here from Claire. Questions about the application for all three thresholds. Um, how
So
long?
the first question, how long from application to award announcements? The trailing time HUD advertises is about 1/4 of the year. It looks like it's 1/4 of the year plus a week or two, really. How many projects have been awarded money? HUD has awarded 2 cohorts of elements, 2 cohorts of leading edge, and 1 cohort of comprehensive as of when I checked yesterday. So the exact number I am not sure, but they are trying to disperse an equal amount of funding per application period. So for comprehensive, that is to say half of the money should still be available.
It's a great question though, in that, are they rolling over? Are they oversubscribed? And are they rolling over applications into successive rounds? And Claire, we'll get back to you on that. That's a really like in-depth but really critical question. So so Ryan, the next question was how much money has been committed so far? So I think we need to get back on that.
Yeah, in the award announcements, HUD does disclose how like the size of the award.
Yeah. When do you know when they tell you the money comes into the deal?
Yeah, that depends on cohort. And a lot of these funds are drawn down as a source in the construction. So it's periodic based on the percentage of construction that's completed. I think I actually have a slide we could provide. We might just append that to this PowerPoint before we distribute it.
Okay. That's a great question too. And so, I mean, we need to, Claire, we'll get a little deeper into that because my thought of like, you having to do construction draws to HUD is like turns my stomach. It sounds terrible. So, so what are the restrictive covenants that come along with it, if any? So, that's a great question.
For one, Davis-Bacon wages are required for these awards. And then in terms of the affordability commitment, I think that's a little different cohort to cohort, but we can get an exact answer on that. I think the short answer, if we're talking about comprehensive, is it's about 25 years, I think, extra.
And yeah, I mean, I think I thought it might just go coterminous with your HAP contract. like whatever HAB contract that you had. But I
I
guess
think it's 25 years or whichever is longer.
yeah, because if your HAP contract was expiring in 3 years and you applied, like you'd have to, that wouldn't be fair. So, so 25 years. Okay. Um, and then how does the submission of the certification process work?
That's a great question. That's probably something that I could get back to you on. That's certainly not something we have dealt with yet.
I think that
Um,
they, so I think you have to follow back. I think I read this somewhere that you have to, you agree, you commit to doing the certification level, and then you have to follow back and actually like apply for, receive the certification and like provide it. I don't know if there's any like clawback. I don't think there's any clawback of the funds. Like if you didn't hit the certification, they're kind of, I think Ryan, we've read this, right? They're sort of open-ended. Like what happens if you miss the certification?
Yeah, and I think maybe crucial to that is that part of what makes the leading edge application more onerous than the others is it requires that you show resumes that people on your team have done these certifications in the last 10 years, they or 5 years. They really want to be sure that they're confident the team applying for these funds and receiving it is going to be able to reach those certifications.
So Elizabeth, I see you have here, you saw, we'll cover this one with the RD 515s. Let me just finish up the comprehensive section, and I think we can jump into the last couple questions. So the application, go ahead.
Do you want me to take this one?
The application ranking? Sure.
Yeah. I'm in the process of doing 3 comprehensive applications right now. So I'm well familiar with this week. So comprehensive is one where you can assess whether you are a good applicant upfront. They are awarding comprehensive to existing buildings with the greatest need for energy efficiency improvement ranked by portfolio manager or MBEST score. Kind of similarly to leading edge, they're looking at the lowest to highest MBEST score using the applicant property's lowest submitted score. Basically, they're looking to see the degree of energy efficiency need on one hand and climate risk need on the other. And that uses that national risk index map. Let's see. If there are tiebreakers when they're looking at those scores, they're going to look next at if your property is located in a census tract with the higher poverty rate, and then also the highest number of HUD assisted units. Anything that you want to add there, Jared?
Nope. I think that's fine. This is similarly, application requirements. They do allow, instead of MBEST, to use like your portfolio manager score if you have one. I know some organizations are doing energy tracking and have scores. And then they will do reimbursement for all kinds of costs associated with the upgrades and monitoring them. So yeah, and like we said, this is kind of a shorter time commitment. These take us more like 10 hours, like for each of these applications. They're just a little less of a commitment in terms of documentation at this stage, at least.
We did get a question. Is the MBEST score something the applicant knows in advance of applying? No, the MBEST is a little bit of a black box. So on comprehensive, if you have an Energy Star score and you're confident that that Energy Star score would make you a good candidate, I would encourage you to use that instead.
Yeah, this is a little bit odd, Claire. We just it doesn't crank out a score, which is kind of frustrating. So, these are like just some of like, if you're interested in any of these, I would say first thing, look at your eligibility and your competitiveness. Like, if you have any of these additional ranking criteria, figure out which application period you think you can hit. You got to get a UEI number on sam.gov, and it takes a little while. So this is really important to jump on right away. And I would say think about the capacity of who's going to do it in your organization, who has the time. And it's not, an overwhelming amount of time, but definitely someone needs to carve out some time. And then, just work on the application and get it submitted. So if you have additional questions, we join these, HUD has office hours where they, every Wednesday from 3 to 4 Eastern, where you can ask any kind of question that you want and you can listen. And we go to the HUD office hours and we ask all the questions that everybody on the webinars asks us that we don't know. So I think that's it, right, for us? We can answer a couple questions.
That is it. So we've got 5 minutes remaining. Talk about question and answer.
Yeah. So can you go back to the slide with the eligible properties? In the beginning, the property types. I think an RD 515 is allowed. 515s, yes. So Elizabeth, 515s are specifically listed here. 515s and 518s.
Yeah, no, I saw that. The question was a little bit more about whether you've had any feedback from USDA on their kind of willingness to work with this program. So that's a little bit more the question because of I know there's several folks on this call who are very expert in RD work, but that was my question.
No, I have not gotten too far into that interaction on the USDA side. We can look into it a little bit, talk to some of our colleagues. Ryan, I have a few colleagues at USDA that work on these programs. We can ask them like what their interface has been. We'll get back to you on that, Elizabeth. Okay.
And I saw another question from Chris about, does Section 3 apply?
I do not think so. Section 3 is the like prevailing wage requirements, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit further than that. Targets specific types of contractors and their employees, and the requirements are just stricter than just Davis-Bacon.
Oh yeah, okay. I've had to do Section 3 requirements, but no, Section 3 standalone is not sufficient.
And then there's a couple last questions out here. Mary asked how likely it is that an organization that applies will actually get the funding. What's your likelihood?
A good question.
I think that for some of these, particularly the comprehensive, you can get a good gauge on if you have a good application based on the energy efficiency need and risk index score. If you have a really high state and national risk index score, those are the only two criteria that HUD is judging by. And you have a property that has deep need for energy efficiency improvements, that's probably going to be a really strong candidate. For the other ones, when we're thinking about these tiebreakers that that HUD has published here, if you're thinking of elements and you want to add solar panels to a building, maybe that's the gap financing you're looking for, and you already have a green certification, you might be a really strong candidate. Like if you can hit the top tier in these application ranking criteria, I would expect those are really strong candidates.
Yeah, I mean, we, you know, we have found that when, the ones that we might not get are if it's a smaller owner and they just have a HUD assisted property, one or two, but both of them are ranked, like they don't really have a lot of the ranking criteria, then those can get declined. We've had those get declined, but
Scott, Jared and Ryan, thank you guys. This is Claire Vander Eyck. I just wanted
Hey,
to,
Claire.
since I'm annoying you guys in the chat, I think to Mary's point here, it would be really useful to get a better understanding of what the success rate for each individual type level has been. And like, I don't know if HUD is going to be that open on their books, but like to know how many projects went in these rounds so far, how many of them got funded, like that percentage of success rate, I think really helps indicate what that is. And because obviously I could really have an incredibly strong project for this, but if I'm up against competitors that also have really strong projects, it's really hard to know. And like you're outlining here, these applications are a heavy lift. So I think getting maybe a better understanding of that would be really useful if that's information that you guys know how to access.
Yeah, and if you're able to provide that, we can help, MHP can help kind of get that out to this group. It sort of pairs also with Justin's question at the end about how much money remains for comprehensive that hasn't already been allocated.
I can answer that. HUD is not, they're distributing an equal amount per funding round. So with two comprehensive funding rounds left, they have committed, I would say, or will have plans to commit half at this point. So half would be remaining.
Yeah, but I think the better question is, is it oversubscribed and are they punting applications down toward the end? And we will get to we'll get to the bottom of the numbers, or whatever, because we'll talk to them, and figure out kind of where they're at in their spend down.
Well, thank you very much, Jared and Ryan, for running us through. I'm going to go ahead and say thank you because we are actually a minute over the hour. And I know folks are dropping off right now. We will be following up with a message with the slides and other resources. And just want to say thank you all for being part of this event.
Thank you for having us. It was great to talk to the group, and we are able to help some of you with your applications.
Thanks so much.
Please reach out.
All right. Thank you,
Okay.
Jared. And we will be following up.
Great. Take care. Bye.